Up next is Ricky, and he's going to be speaking about racial equity.
Thank you. My name is Ricky Defoe. I've been a member and chair of the Duluth Indigenous Commission for 8 years. I'm also serving on the board of Anishinaabe O'Day, a nonprofit here in the city of Duluth. I've also been co-chair of the Juvenile Detention Alternative Initiative to reduce racial disparities in juvenile detention. I've been a resident here in Duluth for about 35 years of my life. I love this city. So I want to talk a little bit about racial equity. And is that fact or is that fiction? Is there really racial equality here in Duluth? More specifically in America? Because we stand in before school, we stand before the commissions and pledge your allegiance to the flag, one nation, and then we talk about liberty and justice. But there's an illusion to that. The reality is there is no equality the way things go now. In this city here in Duluth, for instance, if you're talking about economics, and if you have an Anishinaabe name, you then are automatically, or if you have a African American black sounding name, or if you're Hispanic and you have your name sounds, you get the idea there. Most often times your application is then pushed to the back. This has been proven from studies. So when we talk about when they come bringing in big jobs, the Iron Range, all through the 19th or the 20th century, there was all those jobs up there. Anishinaabe people who have ceded that land to America receives no jobs there. We talk about the city of Duluth here, the Maurice's Tower. How many Native people are working there? How many African American people are working there? How many people of color are working there? These are jobs. This is what brings wellness and goodness to their families. And we also see the DTA, the same thing there. I drive by these construction places. I see no people of color there. There's fact, and then there's an illusion that people are really working. We see a lot of people say these things. Words don't last, they're good words, but they don't last very long if there's no action behind them. So the feelings then, the politics of things, the suppression of voting rights, we see all those things happen. Who do they affect? People of color and the poor, the most vulnerable in America. So we see those things in that, both in the political arena, the economics, education, higher learning. We know that you have no freedom of speech. When you come up for tenure, if you speak out about the system, they have a way of weeding you out. It's same thing in a community college. They weed you out if you think outside the box. And most people do think outside the box because the answers are within our communities and the solutions are within our communities. So we're thinking outside the box of the system that's been inherently detrimental to our communities. So you have to hear us. You can't weed us out because we think differently. It's because we love community. That's why we think this way. And we've suffered long enough. Religion. Now, is there racial equity in religion? Because you have your assumptions. You have your assumptions that there is a dominion over all things. And then the assumption of you have a hierarchy of life in America. Black at the bottom and white at the top. These are not said outwardly anymore, but we know the realities of those things. And also a male transcendent God. Those three, that's the root paradigm. Others think differently, and they were First Nation people here. And I'm one of those. Social status of people. We know much about white hegemony, and its flaws. So do we have any mobility to move from the lower class to the upper class, or even middle class? Much of people of color are looking for longevity, life. We're trying to make it from day to day, never mind check to check. We're just trying to raise our kids so they can have a full life. This is what we're doing here. So I wonder, and we see racism and discrimination played out daily, not only in this city, but in America as a whole. The Constitution and all its racial inequalities and the implications there are still being done today. We know those things. Natives represent 1% of the population in Minnesota, but yet we're 12% of the population in prison. White America in Minnesota represent 90% of the population in Minnesota, but yet they're only 49% of the population within. That's why we look for juvenile. So my question is this. She's got a nice smile there coming at you, that mean. So my question is this. Within 90 days of assuming office, would you develop policies and procedures to ensure that the city staff and the members of the public commissions more accurately reflect the citizens they serve? Now in Duluth is 90% white, 10% people of color. So we're asking the city staff and the commissions more accurately reflect 10%, a bare minimum of that. Would you support that, develop those procedures and policies? Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky. You didn't even have to look at notes. That was impressive. Let's start with candidate Hansen.
Thank you, Ricky. Yes, I would support that. I do think that it's going to take longer than 90 days, but committing to start is part of the process, right? I feel like we have to reach out purposefully. To me, that means not just saying that our doors are open, but figuring out how to go out that door to try to bring people in. Going out to the different communities that don't look like me and trying to figure out how we encourage them to apply for those commissions, apply for those boards, because it can be intimidating. And so how do we break down some of those walls? As far as city staff goes, I think we have an opportunity with driver's license being required too, because I think that just builds a barrier for accessibility and being able to apply for those jobs. But thank you.
So I was just clarifying that is a commitment to start
Yes.
that work within 90 days. Yes.
Candidate Booth.
Oh, well, no, I didn't mean to do that. You asked for a commitment within 90 days. I would try to start with the 90 days, so that would be a yes. But the learning curve that we have as new counselors is probably going to be greater than 90 days. This issue of being on boards, I think, is an issue for all genders, all races, all sexual preferences. We as a whole don't have enough members of Duluth stepping up and filling their civic duty to fill boards and commissions. That's why we have openings on them. Whatever I could do to work with your communities and your cultures to encourage and build leaders to come up and step forward and say that they want to be on these boards and commission, you got my pledge. I think it'd be wonderful. But I just, you know, it's everybody in Duluth is not stepping up and doing their civic duty. Thank you.
Candidate Osbakken.
Thank you, Ricky, and it's always wonderful to hear you. Yes, definitely, the city needs to go to the communities and find people of color, find energetic people, but I wonder, by going to the community clubs, I've heard the city staff, administration, has ideas of what they want, and when they elicit community input, it's kind of a charade. And so I don't know what these boards, I've never been on one. I don't know how effective these boards or commissions are. I would like to see instead something that came out of Brazil and they're trying in Chicago, participatory democracy, where they go to the community, they brainstorm what that community wants, and they vote, and the community votes, the neighborhood votes, and that's what the city does.
Thank you, Candidate Osbach. Candidate Hobbs?
Yes, there should be a priority within the first 90 days on setting benchmarks to make our workforce within the city look like our city and our boards and commissions. We should even go further. If you have one person that's a minority in a room of 10 people that aren't, so 9 people aren't a minority, you're still probably not going to speak up or feel comfortable sharing your opinion. So we need to be intentional in actually increasing that so that you do have a place to share your opinion and not feel like you're going to be ostracized at the end of the board meeting by 9 people. We should make the process easier. The application is somewhat intimidating. It's almost like a job application. And we should also, we can do this through PLAs. Have our friends in labor be much more diverse in their workforce and make sure that we are having our community reflect our workforce both in the government and also where we have the ability to make the workforce in the private sector look like our community as well.
Candidate Larson?
Thank you, Ricky, very much. Absolutely is my answer. And this is actually something that I'm already working on. It's one of the things I'm most looking forward to is having an impact on our own system as a city. It will take more than 90 days in terms of the commissions because we actually don't make those appointments until even April. But this is a very important question for mayors because it is the mayor who makes these recommendations to the city council. So thank you for asking it tonight. And in terms of how we staff, I am working already with our HR department and our public administration to have the discussion about auditing our job descriptions and alleviating artificial barriers that keep people from applying. We also have a lot to do in how we recruit, how we maintain, how we train our own staff to ensure that we are a safe space for all people to work, for all people to be in our building. So we have an enormous amount of work to do on this. Thank you.
Candidate Cypress?
Thanks, Ricky, and thanks for all the work you've done over the years for the community. The answer is yes. I want to stress one thing, though, is that the city council has very little authority over the hiring practices of the city. That's something that really falls to the mayor, and what I'm really, really looking forward to is working with a new mayor who's really committed to this. And so I will do what I can do as a city councilor to move forward the issues with regard to diversifying city staff. With boards and commissions, the city council does approve the nominations that are made by the mayor. And I'm again looking forward to a mayor who pays more attention to this than has been true in the past. But when you have a mayor that doesn't pay attention to this, what you need more than anything else is a city council that's willing to say, no, we're not going to accept the nominations from the mayor if they don't reflect the city. There have been a couple times over the last year or so where we've gotten nominations from the city administration for important commissions like our planning commission, for example, where it did not reflect the diversity of the city, and as city councilors we
Thank you,
said
Candidate
no.
Cypress. Candidate Westerland?
Hi, Ricky. Thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on this. Absolutely, yes. Within the first 90 days, we should be having this conversation. Whatever the timeline is for implementation will probably be longer because things tend to take a long time in government. What I wanted to say is that I'd like to really get to know, maybe through some sort of focus group, what the barriers are to folks from communities of color wanting to participate on boards and commissions. And if it's not a question of want, what are the barriers that are the policy or the verbiage? And I think there's a conception that there are some commissions that are more meaningful and more impactful than others, and I think there's some truth to that. So I'd really like to see some of the commissions that are racially specific, such as our Indigenous Commission, our Human Rights Commission, that really address a lot of those racialized issues, to have actual resources and an actual voice that would allow that body to be a part of the decision-making process rather than just a symbolic presence, which is what some of those tend to be. So absolutely support it and am looking forward to getting to work on that.
Candidate Kennedy?
Thank you. I was hoping I'd get to answer this question because I really truly had this question last year at this forum, and I can tell you that it works because I was sitting in that chair last year. And so it does work, and I want to make sure we're continuing that process. And thank you, Ricky, for all you have done. And so we really need to be deliberate in how we're choosing people to be on commissions and boards. And Councillor Cypress, that actually was me, the incident that he was speaking of, that initially I wasn't going to be chosen to be on a board, and the council actually took a look at who they were asking and made some changes, and now I sit on the Planning Commission. I also serve on the Public Health and Human Services Advisory Committee. So I encourage everyone to just be a part of it. It's a little bit hard and the process is tough, but we want to be the change we want to see in our communities, so we all need to step up, no matter what color or race we are, but especially when we're people of color, it's a little bit tougher for us, so yes, for me.
And candidate Anderson.
The answer is yes, and I'm going to talk really fast because I want to say a bunch of things. In meeting with Police Chief Ramsey, I found a couple of weeks ago, I found out that there were a number of years where affirmative action policies were not followed in our police department, and that absolutely must change. And Chief Ramsey has said that it has changed. There was one particular lawyer on the city staff who said we didn't have to follow that, and I don't know who that is, but I'm counting on that person not being employed by our city anymore. And it just was terrible to hear that. I also want to point out and give a shout out to the St. Louis County Human Services Department. From what I've heard, and these are numbers that my partner, who has done a lot of training for St. Louis County, they currently in the Human Services Office have 17% people of color working there, working to reflect the community, and they have a goal of having 30% people of color on the Human Services staff. And I think the city should be aiming for that.